Welcome to Oaa Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to Oaa Now. I'm Sammy Taramina, blogger of the Dragon's Den, blogger of Inside the OAA, and one of the hosts of Between Taraminas on Orion Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome our friends from Oxford Community Television that are watching us, and also those watching on YouTube. Now, we're live here at the ON TV studio here because of some issues in the podcast room, but the studio will look good for this week's episode of OA Now. Of course, you can also find my information updates on the blog at the Inside the OA in Blogger. So let's look at some big, huge news stories around the league. Of course, it's been a crazy and wacky week. Of course, we've known the matchups now for the girls' basketball crossovers. And my thoughts on some big-time games that occurred last week, which really had some interesting thoughts on there. Let's go with the big story from Farmington Hills Harrison. Of course, I still can't get this over my mind, what was going on around the league. Alan Walker resigning middle part of the season to the end of the season. He's no longer at Farmington Hills Harrison. He stepped down after two accurate sources told me that what happened over at Harrison, and this was a odd scenario what happened over at Harrison. When you look at the issue, Walker abruptly stepped down after facing parent pressure, and he did not get the backing of the school administration. So, and that's why he did leave Harrison, and now currently, the new boys coach, first-year boys coach, Stephon Wilson, took over the team, and now he's in a delicate situation. We'll go over Stephon Wilson's situation in a minute. But with Walker, is it more a betrayal, or is it more of a, or is it, like maybe the peer pressure of being a head coach got to him? Of course, we all know Walker was a long-time assistant under Coach Gary Freilich at Troy. And then here's the keys. He was brought in to bring the keys of a very good team, of course, that Coach Tim Micklash left him. Of course, you look at what Tim Micklash had when you look at Kristen Nelson and Amber Steffens, the two senior, the two most successful players at Harrison since in a long time. Of course, Steffens and Nelson both went to the regional finals together their sophomore year when Harrison won their district and lost in the regional final in a heartbreaking fashion to Dexter. But when I look at Harrison, the team that Harrison has, they have a very good post player in Olivia Perkins. She's undersized. But you have Teddy Perkins come outside and shoot a three. Nelson and Steffens are like our dribble drivers, can shoot threes, good free throw shooters. But this was a season I think that Harrison had. The expectations were, the expectations are still there. But the expectation for Harrison was to at least compete for a division championship. Of course, and we all knew nobody was going to touch Southfield Lathrop because of their for Division I recruit talent that they have. Of course, Deja Church is going to be a Division I recruit coming out of probably. There's a lot of schools looking at her. Of course, we all know about Antoinette Miller and the Bello twins, Keandre and Taj going over to Minnesota next year. But the Harrison, this was a team that should have won at least a few more games. They sit right now at 12-6 overall. They got a tough schedule coming up. They got to play Rochester Adams on Tuesday, and they got to play Orion on Thursday, and then they're in that district where they're probably going to see North Farmington on Wednesday, and that'll be at West Bloomfield. So it'll be a very interesting couple weeks for new coach Stephon Wilson to adapt. Now, my source I talked to, of course, said that Harrison is going to be in a better place with Wilson as coach. But the question is going to be, I answered that question a little bit of skepticism. I'm very skeptic with that because when you look at what Walker did, Walker installed a different type of offense to Harrison, but also I didn't think the kids bought into it. I don't know if the kids trusted Walker compared to if it was with Micklash, and especially the parents. And that's some questions over there that had to be answered over at Harrison. Why Walker, was it Walker bailed on his team, or was it that the parents and staff administration forced him out? That's the $1 million question that we got to find out what happened over there. But for Walker, I think he's going to get another job somewhere else. It wouldn't surprise me next year that Troy will look at possibly getting him back into Troy. He could be an assistant again under Gary Fralick. I expect that to happen. And we've also got and then of course, I think Walker, I know he works in Troy, but it could be somewhere where I think Walker gets the benefit of the doubt and works in Troy. And also I think to be back with Gary Fralick, I think would make a lot of sense for him. But we don't know. We don't know how his decision is going to be. We don't know how it's going to respond. For Harrison, of course, this ramification here is a interesting situation for them because now you have Walker as their coach. Wilson as their coach. You have and now you still have your senior. You still have a season still has to be played. You have to play three. You have 3 guaranteed games. If you're one of the district favorites in that West Bloomfield district, of course you're going to have to look at. There's a couple teams I think can definitely be Harrison. North Farmington is one. Also, you got Farmington Hills Mercy and maybe West Bloomfield. I mean, those 3 teams definitely can beat Harrison on any given day. So when you look at the situation that occurred right now, and then let's look at Stephon Wilson as a coach. Of course, he's also coaching the boys team over at Harrison as well, and he's in a la Jeff Rubin. Of course, we all know Jeff Rubin was the coach at Andover High School before they merged to become Bloomfield Hills. But he took over both boys and girls teams, and it was a tough hassle for him. Coaching both teams. I mean, and of course, we all know when Dwayne Graves left amidst allegations, of hitting a player, that he was in line. He was in line to possibly get the boys' job, but that job thankfully ended up going to Mike Mariansky, and Rubin still coaches the girls' team over at Bloomfield Hills. But Wilson, I think, is in a very difficult but delicate situation here because when you look at the situation that he was given, he did not expect to coach the girls' team. He did not expect to coach. No, he did not expect to coach that team. I mean, for Harrison, their JV team is not bad, but you look at the situation. He has varsity experience. He's had a lot of success coaching over there. So if it was me personally, I would have asked Micklash to come back to coach this team because the kids and the parents respected Tim Micklash not only as a coach but also as a person. I think that would have made a lot more sense, a lot more dynamic, and it would have been more interesting because, of course, Nelson and Steffens, of course, both of them played under Micklash for 3 years, and then, of course, now experiencing the chaos they're going through their senior years, it's difficult. Of course, Steffens coming off a torn ACL, of course, when she got hurt last year, of course, a lot of people said Harrison would have been the team to go back last year had not been for the injuries, and that is true. But Olivia Perkins played very well under in Kyla Rowland's absence. Of course, Kyla Rowland was their big at Harrison. But I think when you look at the team now, I think there's been Harrison, of course, 12-6 for them is very disappointing. Of course, they had some tough losses. Of course, losing Lathrop twice, then the losses to Stony Creek and Clarkston, and then of course they had a 10-point loss to Detroit Renaissance, and then of course the loss to Chelsea in overtime and playing a back-to-back. Never the easiest thing to do, but for Harrison, it was a tough situation, and Walker not having the backing of the administration and staff, I guess, kind of forced him to go. Now, the question I ask, is this a stabbing or a betrayal? And this is stabbing because it looked like that this resignation did not end in good terms between Walker and Harrison. And I guess it did not. And, and that's why I asked myself this question was it a stabbing in the back, or was it a stabbing in the, or did they decide to mutually part ways? And it's a very interesting story. It's a very dynamic story. I still can't get my head around it that a coach would leave middle to the end of the season, and it was an unfortunate circumstance over at Harrison. Let's go to football news. Of course, a little bit of news occurred. Of course, we all know the big day. The football classics are in play. Of course, Southfield naming their new head coach. It wasn't no surprise. Tim Connolly is the new coach over at Southfield. Jason Solman's going to stay on staff over there at the new Southfield High School. This Southfield team's going to be loaded and talented. Their first 3 weeks, though, is going to be very interesting because they got to play Troy Martin Luther King, who's a defending state champion, and then they got to play Clarkston week 2, and then they got Groves week 3. So, this will be very interesting. A lot of state power week 2, OA Blue Champ week 3, and then you have the defending state champs week 1. So, pretty interesting slate for Southfield to start off, of course. Now, I don't understand why they're calling themselves Southfield A&T, which is known as Southfield Advanced Technology. I don't think that should be a good name at all. I think it should be called plain Southfield. But I'm not the one naming names. I was skeptic about the name Warriors on a couple weeks ago when they decided to go to the name and the color scheme. I was very skeptical about it, but it is what it is. So, but other teams around the area that are playing in that classic at Wayne State, it's called the Gridiron Classic, I believe. You got Orion playing Chippewa Valley week 1. Of course, I'm curious to see how Orion does without Kane Prescorn and Keith Fields. Now they're both gone. And then, of course, Chippewa Valley lost a lot of senior talent from a year ago. But Chippewa Valley, though, did keep their head coach in Scott Merchant, who was thought to be the coach at Warren D. LaSalle for a time. That ended up not happening. Of course, Warren D. LaSalle ended up going with Mike Gianni, who left Macomb, Dakota, to go to Warren D. LaSalle. Interesting situation there. And also Oak Park, of course, the Knights, very talented team. I like Don Mathis, freshman who's very talented, very gifted. He has, and of course, he and his Knights under Coach Greg Carter will play Detroit Cass Tech in their first game. And my thoughts on that'll be a very tough match for Oak Park. But we'll see what happens. We shall see what happens in that matchup. No doubt about it. My final thoughts here on football, of course, it's going to be very interesting, of course, Tim Connolly being named at Southfield. Not much of a surprise. I kind of expected would happen over there. I know they're going to have to go through some ramifications, like some renovations, I guess, to their basketball court, to their basketball, their football field. I'll be curious to see what happens to Lathrop, especially how they're going to treat that school now that that school will no longer be in existence. Of course, I hear that they're going to sell it to a charter school, but we shall see. I'm curious to see what happens to Southfield Lathrop. Of course, they've got some very, very interesting questions, to say the least, over there. And now when we come back, we're going to talk about, we're going to preview the girls' basketball thoughts and girls' basketball crossovers coming up here on Oaa Now. Whew. Welcome back to Orion Now. I'm Sammy Taramina here. Interesting news around the league, of course. The first ever crossovers have been released for girls basketball, weather permitting, because it looks like apparently that we could get a major snowstorm Wednesday night into Thursday, of course, an all-day Thursday, which could spell maybe a lot of cancellations. Now, the question is, will they move the games to possibly either Friday or to the weekend? That's a major question that schools are going to have to look at. And also, do other schools have different places? Of course, we know that Lake Orion has the Cirque Gym. We all know that Oxford has an aux gym that they can play their games in if need be for an emergency. We know Clarkston has Clarkston Junior High where they can play their games. Various different schools have different surroundings. But the question will be is, it would not surprise me on Thursday there'll be some cancellations or postponements, of course, especially with districts coming up. We will be live at Lake Orion High School for districts sometime next week. So we'll preview the Lake Orion district. Of course, that district will be very interesting because they got Waterford Kettering, Waterford Mott, Clarkston, Oxford, and also you got Pontiac in there as well. So very interesting dynamic. Of course, we're previewing those districts, and it's a big one too. So very interesting dynamic going around over there. My thoughts of last week, I thought the best game throughout. I think there were two great games in there. But I also thought the Southfield Seaholm game in the blue, I thought was a very good game. Of course, that was won late by Southfield. That was a crazy game. Kenzie Harbour at 20 points. Seaholm battled back hard against Southfield. Of course, they got Southfield rattled. But at the end of the day, Southfield won that one by 2, and it was a huge win for Coach Jamie Gens and his team. They got a good future next year, of course, when they merge. Now, I'm curious who's going to coach that team. Could it be Michelle Jackson-Marshall, or could it be Jamie Gens? I mean, a lot of people I've been hearing about over at Southfield will probably be Jamie Gens will be the one that, well, actually will be Michelle Jackson-Marshall will be the one coaching that new Southfield High School. Be very interesting, though. Be very, very interesting. But two other games I thought were great were the Tribute to the Troops game. Stony Creek played Clarkston. Of course, it's the third annual game. That was won by Stony Creek, 38-33. It's shocking that Stony Creek defensively, they played very well again. The first game was 33-23 in favor of Clarkston over Stony Creek, and the second time around it was 38-33 in favor of Stony Creek. So something different occurred over there at Clarkston, at Stony Creek. So it was a huge win for the Cougars. Of course, they got their confidence back up. Thoughts about that? I think that I like the idea of tribute to the troops. It's a good thing to honor our fighters who have been fighting overseas, and also our military. So Clarkston, keep doing a good thing over there, you know. Another game I forgot to mention was Boomba Hills' pink out game. Of course, they played Royal Oak in that game. Boomba Hills won that game. They shot well at home for a change, snapping that brutal 4-game losing streak at home. They're still without Amanda Sape. I don't know if she'll be playing in the district, but I hear she is in school. So when you look at Bloomfield Hills' situation, Bloomfield Hills is still, I think they're going to be fine. They're going to be okay. But the problem is, of course, you have Birmingham Marion, who just won the Catholic League championship, of course, with a blowout win over Farmington Hills Mercy, and then a huge win over Warren Regina. Of course, with Birmingham Marion and Bloomfield Hills, that'll be a very interesting game, especially if they would have Sape in that game, the Blackhawks. I think Bloomfield Hills wins that game, but I'm not sure when I look at it. You look at my preview in the blog, of course, my thoughts on who will win the districts coming up. And also, of course, another one that occurred was North Farmington and Lake Orion. Of course, that was Lake Orion was without Evelyn Witchmeyer, and you got to give the Dragons a pass in that game. I mean, if Witchmeyer had a 103-degree fever during the week, and she didn't practice. And North Farmington, of course, is their senior night. They're going to be motivated. I think that the crowd and the hostility got the Lake Orion early. They were down 15-4. The Dragons slowly came back, of course, led by Maddie Novak, who had 24 points. But they cut it to 2 after a huge 4-point play by Cameron Coltrane. But their inexperience kind of showed up in that final 2-minute stretch where they turned the ball over twice, which led to victory for the Raiders. And North Farmington now is looking like they're going to win the white title. So, and they released the crossovers this week. A couple games that intrigue me, of course, if these games happen. Now, I know there's one more league game this week for everybody in the league, but the crossover games are very interesting because you got some interesting games. Of course, Clarkston going back of course, Bloomfield Hills is going back to Clarkston to play the Wolves, of course. They played earlier in the year. They played actually a week ago. They played Monday night where Bloomfield Hills, it was 47-41 in favor of Clarkston. Probably a big opportunity for Coach Jeff Rubin to, to turn around the corner, to turn around what happened in that game and look at what went wrong in that game with Clarkston. Of course, they're still going to have to deal with a huge size mismatch inside with Kayla Lukenbach, Molly Nicholson, Bree Blitzer. I think it's going to be a huge problem. Clarkston's got at least 4 6-footers. I think it's going to definitely give Bloomfield Hills a lot of problems in that game. Southfield Lathrop, North Farmington, though. North Farmington, even though that team, they got no chance against Lathrop because Lathrop's going to kill them and eat them alive. I really do think that's going to happen. But if there's any sort of hope for North Farmington, it's just basically you just got to get them in the foul trouble. If you get the Bellows in the foul trouble, you get the Churches in the foul trouble, you get Church in the foul trouble, and then you get Antoinette Miller in the foul trouble, you might have a chance because Lathrop's bench is not that good. If you think about it, if you get those big four players in the foul trouble. So North's got a chance, but it's a pretty slim chance. Stony Creek and West Bloomfield is going to be an interesting game, of course. I think Charlika Stubbs is going to have, and Taylor Pierce is going to have a lot of trouble with Stony Creek. Now, Stony Creek defensively is solid. They're stout, but we'll see what happens. We shall see what happens. You could probably call it the Sammy Taramina Bowl, I think I call it that game, because, of course, both teams know yours truly. So, very interesting game there between Stony Creek and West Bloomfield. The Orion and Harrison's perhaps an interesting game because you look at the Dragons. Orion's got Maddie Novak. Harrison's got Amber Steffens and Kristen Nelson. Very unique matchup. Now, if Orion will have a mismatch inside, especially with Evan Witchmeyer. Because if Witchmeyer is back, and I expect Witchmeyer to be back fully healthy for this game. If Witchmeyer comes back healthy, Harrison's quick and athletic, but they can be beat. I think Orion's got a chance in that game against Harrison. They have a great chance. I think out of the best teams in the white, they have a great chance to win against the red. I think Orion has the best chance. Because when you look at that game, Harrison, of course, they're going to have Nelson and Steffens, but, if Orion, Kristen Nelson, very athletic player, very gifted player, very talented player, also a great leader in the point guard spot, plays very similar to Diego Gomez of Lake Orion, his boys basketball team. Plays very ironically similar. Steffens, same thing. Plays ironically similar. So Orion should know this team inside out. Of course, Olivia Perkins, a very good big inside, even though for size, she's going to have challenge inside with size. Teddy Perkins, a very good three-point shooter. Nyla Warren's a very good inside presence as well. But in this game, I think Lake Orion wins that game over Harrison. I really do. And I'm not being biased either, because I think Wishmeyer's going to go off. They don't have an answer for Novak. But the problem is Orion don't have an answer for Nelson or Steffens. So this will be a high-scoring game if they play it, because, like I said, the possibility of a snowstorm is still there. But you also got to look at some interesting blue games, too. Of course, Berkeley Seaholm is the one that will intrigue me. Because the reason why I think that'll intrigue me is because Berkeley and Seaholm's got a really nice rivalry. The match between Cecilia Summers and Mackenzie Harbor is going to be a great matchup. I think, though, at the end of the day, the game's at Seaholm, and I think that Seaholm will win that game over Berkeley, but it's still a great matchup to watch, no doubt about that. And then, of course, you have Groves against Southfield. Of course, this matchup here will be a great matchup, I think, because the question is going to be, is does Groves have enough size to contain Southfield? And Southfield's quickness and athleticism. I think Shea Carter will get hounded in this game. Of course, Southfield's got a very good defender who can guard Shea Carter. It wouldn't surprise me if Southfield wins that game over Groves. It really would not. But then there's some other matchups there. I think that'll be blowouts. I think Farmington and Ferndale will be a blowout. I think that Hazel Park and Rochester will be a blowout in favor of Rochester despite Rochester's injuries. Troy Athens Oak Park will be a very interesting game. I think when you look at that game, Athens, they have the players that can go at it, but Oak Park, a whole different team at home. I think, though, at the end of the day, I just think that the Knights are going to be an interesting team to watch. So keep an eye on the district. So we'll see what happens there. Final thoughts on the games this week, of course. Like I said, key tune to the weather situation going around there. So there could be some cancellations, especially Thursday, especially with the forecast projected to be 3 to 6 inches of snow. But who knows? The games could still go on. And, it could be, if I'm you, probably be best bet to either have a truck or van, on a truck or van on Thursday, because it's going to be just an absolute mess on the road. So we'll see what happens. Right now, when we come back, we're going to talk boys basketball here on Oaa Now. Man, I get tired too easily. Welcome back to Oaa Now. I'm Sammy Termina here, live from the ON TV set here. Of course, podcast room, as a reminder to everybody, some damage, a little bit of damage suffered there in the podcast room because of a water incident next door. So very, very interesting dynamic here. So we're here at the studio. Of course, a lot of people do remember this is the site for the football preview show for what we did couple months ago. So very interesting. We'll be having another football preview show here coming up in the next couple months. So very unique situation. So, but let's go to boys basketball. Of course, we've had wrestling districts. Of course, Oxford is still in the is in the state semifinals now for wrestling. Probably the only team left in the OAA that is competing as a team heading into the state finals of wrestling. So, be interesting to see what happens with Oxford. So we'll keep an eye on the Wildcats on the road to the state finals and to road to Battle Creek. So very interesting dynamic. Of course, individual wrestling district tournaments, I think, is this weekend at the Palace of Auburn Hills. So very interesting. A lot of individuals going, but also the teams. You got to look at the team. So, but the boys basketball, of course, some upsets. You know what I mean? Of course, highlighted by Clarkson's tough 58-53 loss to North Farmington a couple weeks ago. Huge win for North Farmington, for them to knock off Clarkson, to finally get that demon off their back. That demon monkey off their back, I call it, when they knock off Clarkson like that. North Farmington had a nice week by blowing out Southfield Lathrop. They put up 98 on them. Odd enough, Lathrop put up 69 on them. So, and then blowing out Troy Athens 74-24. So, great week for Todd Negocian and Tom Negocian, despite the fact that Todd Negocian's been battling kidney stones for about a week and a half now. So, very interesting dynamic there. Of course, the big one. Of course, I think the screw job of the week occurred what happened at Farmington High School. Lake Orion and Farmington, of course, just some bad calls against Lake Orion that just went the other way against Farmington, which resulted in the 6-6-6-2 loss. I do have a question, though, when it comes to referees in Lake Orion. I don't know what type of grudge they have against the Dragons. I really don't. Some of them do. Not all of them have one. Of course, in that girls' game, of course, Orion coach Steve Roberts was teed up in that game. Also, I've never seen the amount of frustration that Orion fans and parents have had to endure what happened at Farmington. It kind of was like a really tough situation. A couple bad calls. I think the charge against David Gomez was a bad call. And then, of course, the no call where Gomez was at center court, which resulted in a turnover, resulted in Farmington getting the ball and Farmington winning that game. So it was not a good ending on Friday night for the Dragons against the Falcons. And I think the officiating had a lot to do with that game. My thoughts, I think the referee should be regionalized to league refs, not regional. It should be just league-only officials. That's what I think. And that's what I think the MHA should go to that route because of the dynamics. Whereas if you think about it, I think the officiating would make a lot of sense if it was league-only officials. Now there's going to be a lot of non-league games where I think that if you're playing a non-league game, I think you need to have one OA ref or one other conference ref. So I think it would make a lot of sense, be fair to the MHA officiating crews. So that's my thoughts on that. Boys, Clarkson had no problem with Adams. Of course, Clarkson and Adams both were orange for of course, we all know what happened with Michigan with them, with their Chad Tough shirts. They wore orange for that game. Good gesture by Clarkson to do that. Good gesture by Adams to go along and do that. But of course, the one thing that stunned me the most was with Rochester Adams, and it was a game when they played Southfield. Two calls I think were questionable calls. Spencer Littleson throwing the ball down in frustration. He ended up getting teed up. And then, of course, John Hall defending a player defending Littleson. Then he got teed up. That resulted in a 52-47 win by Southfield over Adams. So Adams and Southfield do play on Monday night, so that ought to be very interesting between those two teams. I think it'll be a very good game. I think Adams will win that game, though, because I think Adams is clearly the better team here in this matchup. But you never know with Southfield. You really never know. And then, of course, Wednesday is the big game. So around the league, of course, and nothing better than a typical Lake Orion Oxford boys basketball game on a Monday night, on a Wednesday night. Of course, yours truly be calling that JV game on Wednesday night between Orion and Oxford. So it'll be also on ONTV, also be on OCTV as well. So very interesting dynamic. I think it's going to be a good matchup, but in the varsity matchup. But the question is now, Oxford did bring in a player in Connor Bandel. Of course, here's a kid who I know he's had issues with the old administration with Stepan Henning, but now he's back in the fold and playing power forward now for Oxford. Not sure how much playing time he's going to get, though, but I know but Stony Creek, of course, was a team. When they played Stony Creek on Friday night, they were blown out 82-49. Stony Creek, they had a tough week. They went through Lake Orion, won in overtime over the Dragons. It was a heck of a game between those two teams. And then, of course, blowing out Oxford, I think, was the piece of the camel's back where they ended up winning that title outright. So big win for Oxford, league championship for Oxford. And for the Wildcats, and for the Cougars, it's a huge accomplishment considering a couple of years ago that this team was 0-21, and now that they can call themselves now district champions. So when I look at the games around the league, of course, the white is a 3-team race now between Pontiac, West Bluefield, and Bloomfield Hills. Of course, these 3 teams, of course, Bloomfield Hills has really been hot and cold lately. West Bloomfield starting to get it at the right time, and Pontiac has been going through their business, of course. I was shocked Pontiac lost by 1 to Avondale, 48-47. Of course, Pontiac and Avondale, of course, are neighborhood rivals. Of course, it's not a short distance for Pontiac and Avondale to go see each other. Of course, you can see their schools. Especially where Pontiac and Avondale, from a Pontiac point of view, whereas when you go to Avondale, you know what I mean, you can really can't see it, but Pontiac and Avondale actually has been starting to become a really nice rivalry. Much more of a border rivalry there, and of course, I would think personally, like, I know Pontiac and Pontiac Notre Dame Prep has been starting to become a little bit of rivalry again. Of course, they played this year in boys basketball. So, when I look at, and I also forgot to mention, of course, in girls basketball, of course, we talked about the fight a little bit between what happened between Groves and Ferndale there. Unfortunate situation, but teams' frustrations are mounting, and and it's basketball's an emotional game. It really is. It really is an emotional game. Also, back to boys basketball for a minute there. We got Rochester and Stony Creek. It's going to be a huge game. I think that those 2 games are going to be, Stony Creek, it'll tell where Rochester's at personally. But for Stony Creek, of course, the league locked up, them getting ready for districts. Of course, their district is at Rochester Adams, where you're going to probably, it's more than likely, could be a Rochester Adams final, but you can't count Rochester out. Be a Stony Creek Rochester Adams final, but you can't count out Rochester out. Rochester, solid team, good team. Hunter Schlachner, Ivan Barraza Duran, LaMarco Goldridge. I think Rochester will be fine in that final stretches of the regular season. Of course, very interesting dynamics heading into districts. So when you look at the situation going on around the league, it's very dynamic. We still don't know. We'll know in a month from now about how Lapierre's eligibility in the league will be. I still think personally Lapierre will get into the league. It'll probably be in the next few years or so. The OA seriously needs to expand. We're all waiting about the Kensington Lake situation, how that's going to turn out. So we shall see what happens. We shall see what happens. All right, now, everybody, I'm going to sign off here. Enjoy the rest of the week. Stay safe in the snow. Sammy Termina, I'm signing off. Good night. God bless all.
Oaa Now is produced at Orion Neighborhood Television, Lake Orion's community media outlet. To learn more about ONTV, visit our website at www.orionontv.org or call us at 248-393-1060.